Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Valeriano Ramos with Everyday Democracy. I'm also the coordinator of the Connecticut Civic Health Project and the Connecticut Civic Ambassadors Initiative. I want to welcome everyone, especially our civic ambassadors, to this Zoom event, Recruit Your Mayor. Thank you for joining us today. I want to start by welcoming and thanking our special guest, the first selectman of East Lyme, Mr. Mark Nickerson. And before I introduce him, however, I would like to ask everyone to introduce yourself by name and organizational affiliation. Please mention whether you are a civic ambassador, so anyone can start.
I'll start. Sally Whipple. I'm the Executive Director of Connecticut's Old State House, and I'm on the Health Advisory Group and a Civic Ambassador.
Thank you, Sally. Great to have you here. Anyone else?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name is Tere Luna. I'm here as a Civic Ambassador.
Thank you, Tere, for joining us.
Hey everybody, I'm Mar, and I work at United Way of Greater New Haven, and I'm also a Civic Ambassador.
Thank you, Mark. Great to have you here.
I'm Sandy. I'm Val's coworker here at Everyday Democracy.
Thank you, Sandy. Who else is there? Okay, I think that's it, right? So at this point, I'm very, very pleased to introduce our guest speaker today, the first selectman of East Lyme, Mr. Mark Nickerson. Mark Nickerson was elected as East Lyme's first selectman in November 2014 and took office in January of 2015. Before taking that office, he had served from 1991 to 1996 as deputy first selectman to the former first selectman, Paul Formica. He had also served on the Zoning Commission between 1999 and 2009, becoming its chairman in 2001. He was elected to the Board of Selectmen in 2009. Before that, before becoming a public servant, First Selectman Nickerson opened the local Geico office in Groton in 1990 and a second office in Rhode Island in 2000. So he is also a businessman. He also has a distinguished track record of service as past president of the Navy League of US East Connecticut Council, past secretary and vice president of the Groton Rotary Club, past director of the Eastern Connecticut Chamber of Commerce, and past chairman of the Military Affairs Committee of the Chamber of Commerce. He continues to serve with the Niantic Rotary Club. He also serves as Honorary Chief Petty Officer of U.S. Navy and U.S. Coast Guard. He's a member of the Southeast Connecticut Council of Governments and a member of the Connecticut Council of Municipalities. First Selectman Nickerson is also manager and coach of various youth baseball and soccer teams in East Lyme. He's married to Marlene Popeo Nickerson since 1988, and together they are raising two beautiful sons, Ryan, who is 21, and Andrew, who is 18. Welcome, First Selectman Nickerson.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. It's thank you very much. I get lost in all those dates and how many years I served here and there, but it's you know, and it all started as a very selfish endeavor. I had a business to run and needed to be a part of the community. So you join the Chamber of Commerce, and then you know you volunteer for a few of the committees. Then you move up to director, and same thing with the Navy League organization, which is a civilian organization that supports the Navy and Marine Corps, and I kind of got very involved with that, and it's been a pleasure over the years. Same thing in my town. I volunteered to be the lowliest person on the ballot in 99, I guess. Zoning commission alternate, which means I didn't even sit on the commission. If someone got the flu, I got to sit, but otherwise I was just in the audience paying attention and being an alternate. And 18 years later, or 15 years later, became the first selectman, not because of a pursuit, but because of opportunity. that rose. So thank you for having me here. It's the first time I've done one of these things before. I met with a Chamber of Commerce group earlier today and spoke to 100 people, and that was a lot easier than this. This is weird, staring at a dot on a
It's
laptop.
getting used to it. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so Mark, can I refer to you as Mark also as well?
Yes, of course.
Okay, great. So first of all, thank you again, Mark. And what I'm going to do is I have a few questions for you, and then, but I also at the end want to give an opportunity for the participants to also ask questions or make comments. And this is kind of a very informal conversation, so feel free to, just answer, comfortably. My first question is, can you speak briefly about the East Lyme Volunteer Corps? What does it consist of? Who is supporting it? And why and how do you embark on this significant civic engagement initiative?
It's a good question. That's why we're here, right, as the Volunteer Corps. Kind of an idea that sprung up in my head maybe even 2 years ago, and it took me a while to get it off the ground and find the right opportunity on my calendar and in my schedule to launch it properly. Listen, we live in a really great 19,000 person community. If you know where East Lyme is, we're between Saybrook and Mystic. We're on the coast. We have 3 beach towns. We have a 1-mile boardwalk, great school system, great neighborhoods, great support, great churches. So we already have volunteers. We have lots of civic, as all towns do. Lots of civic participation. So it came down to hearing over and over again, bumping into people, oh, if I knew that you needed volunteers, I would have signed up for that, or things like that. People saying, I wish I knew, and people saying, how can I get involved? So it's the marrying of opportunity with people that this idea sprung from. I got to admit, most of my ideas are borrowed. That's success, man. If you want to be successful in business or in political environment, you borrow ideas. This one was on my own. However, I've discovered since then that other communities do this as well. It's so the idea came from those who want to be involved, or those who would have wanted to volunteer had they known and where to sign up and all that. So I'm marrying the people with the opportunity.
And Mark, I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things that we always tell people that are part of civic work, civic participation work, is that more often than not, people volunteer or are engaged because somebody invited them. Somebody asked them to. And many times they don't know that they can, because they don't know that there are opportunities. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it reinforces what we've always told people, that it's about asking others to volunteer and to be part of engagement. So thanks for mentioning that. And so a related question to that is the Volunteer Corps targeting a particular set of social community needs in your town, or is it just a broad-based effort to engage people in a whole variety of volunteer opportunities?
We're a couple months into this, so I'd love to do this again in 2 years to tell you how it evolved, because I think it is going to be an evolution. We did it on a broad base. We have high school students signing up that might be, we might be linking them up. And the Volunteer Corps, how it works is, again, the people and the need. And so we're describing it as a match.com. Right? We're taking the people and saying, here's a need. If you're interested, give these organizations a call. So the town is stepping away from the actual connection. Here's an opportunity, and you said you're looking for opportunity. If this matches, go give the program coordinator a call and volunteer. It's that simple. I'm keeping it that simple. So we're engaging everyone. I've had 70-year-old people who are already involved in the senior center but want to do more. But my vision is it would be across the board in every demographic. So from the high school student stuff to people who want to help the high school students, all the way to the senior center drivers and the Meals on Wheels program, the library volunteers, maybe tutors for high school students. so we're still in an evolution here. Of course, there's always going to be the need for soup kitchen people and people to volunteer food for those kind of causes. We're in the process of raising money for a Miracle League field in our town, for a field for disabled children and children with need. And there'll be a lot of volunteer opportunities for that in a year when that's built. So it's across the board.
Right. And so, Mark, I noticed that on the website, there's a link for people to register, right?
Yeah.
They can actually register and indicate what interest they have, and then someone in your for some reason. Here. Can you hear me?
So now we can. Now you're unmuted, but you were muted
I
by
was good. I don't know what happened for some reason.
hands
But-
off the screen.
So people do register. They go to the website and they also register it, right?
Right.
Okay.
So that's how we sign up. We put it out on our Facebook page. My personal Facebook page has become a town Facebook page with 3,000 viewers, etc. But on our town website, as I think you're seeing here, there is a link on our home page that says, "Would you like to be a volunteer?" And you link through. We ask you some questions, and then there's some security issues where we send you an email link to make sure it's you, so we don't have a bunch of pranksters or whatever. And so we go back and forth and verify the emails, and it has worked out. We have a couple hundred people that signed up in the first month. I don't know what the numbers are now. And in our first and second newsletters that we sent out to people, we had about 7 organizations featured that gave opportunities for people to sign up. So we did ask specifically for skill sets. Are you a carpenter? Are you a plumber? Are you this and that? Are you, certified driver, et cetera, because there might be opportunities very specific in the future where we might reach out to an individual and say, I got a senior citizen that has a real issue. I'm giving a very broad example or a specific example. It could go many ways, but I have an 85-year-old widow who needs some electrician volunteer hours. Can you help her? Kind of thing.
Oh, that's great.
So we're looking for these specific matchmaking one-on-one, and then the broader, here's a list of people, here's a list of opportunities. If you're interested, give the coordinators a call. So we left that open for that reason.
Wonderful. That's great. So
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier that there's already a lot of people in East Lyme who are involved as volunteers. And one of the things that we've done with the Connecticut Civic Health Project is to publish what we call the Civic Health Index reports. In 2016, for example, we published the second report for Connecticut. And that report measures indicators of civic health and civic participation in our state. And one of the things that the report found was that between 2006 and 2013, about 26% of Connecticut residents volunteered on a regular basis in local service, community, and other civic organizations in Connecticut. Would you say that that is about the same as in your town, about 26% or a quarter of the population, or would you say that East Lyme enjoys a higher level of civic engagement and volunteerism?
So you wonder, how they come up with those numbers, obviously. And you wonder, I'm sitting here thinking it's 100% because, and not because of our organization and that volunteer core idea. I mean, when you add up all those youth organizations where parents are getting involved in their kids' school, and they might volunteer here and there in the classroom, or the little leagues, or all the church programming, and they might sit on a committee within their church that's doing something for the betterment of the community. There's so many opportunities out there in so many different ways. So we're highlighting the obvious volunteer. We need a volunteer for our triathlon that's coming up in August. We need 100 volunteers for that. And that's a very direct volunteer thing. But there's so many little committees and so much that's done in a town with parents signing up on the children's behalf, et cetera. It's just, I find it amazing. I find it amazing. I think it's higher in East Lyme anyway. Will this volunteer corps increase that? It might, and we've yet to be able to put a number on that, but I'm sure it will give opportunities for people to be more engaged. We're planting seeds. If nothing else, we're planting seeds and ideas for people to get involved.
Wonderful.
Because when you give, you get.
That's
right.
right.
I think that's the message.
Exactly. And obviously that goes to, what you had mentioned in your blog, that volunteering contributes to, to making a community stronger, to having a greater sense of pride and identity. And have you noticed that as a result of this ongoing engagement, especially with the volunteer corps?
Yeah, I can't specifically talk about the volunteer corps results yet. Again, we're a couple months into the launch. But there's a lot of pride in our community. There's a lot of that anyway. We're a very prideful town. We have great schools and great efficient town government. And it's not utopia. If it was, they wouldn't need me, right? We problem solve every day, but there is a sense of pride. And I think that happens in every community, maybe not the entire community. So you'll find pockets of neighborhoods that are very prideful of where they live and who they are, their sense of place, and who they identify as and where they're from. And I think that's found everywhere. We find it town-wide here. Yeah, pride has a lot to do with volunteerism, I think, within the community.
That's right. And that, Mark, I'm glad you mentioned that because, studies have been done by CIRCLE, the Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement at Tufts University, that has shown that communities that have higher levels of volunteerism and participation and civic engagement have stronger communities, that they have a stronger sense of identity, stronger pride. There's more contact with their public officials, with neighbors working together. And, they tend to also generally participate more in the political process, whether attending public events, public hearings, or voting even. So one of the things that we measure with the Civic Health Report also is the contact between community residents and local public officials, like their mayors or first selectmen. So I want to ask you, would you say that, like the report said that in 2013, 13.8% of Connecticut residents contacted their public officials. Would you say that through the volunteer corps and other volunteer opportunities that you have supported, that as a result of that, there has been a higher level of contact that you've had with your constituents, in part because of the volunteer?
Yeah, or as a result of that, there came, I don't know if it was the chicken or the egg that came first on this one, because so many people are involved in our community and reached out to me, thus became the volunteer corps. But on the other side too, I've met a lot of people and spoken to organizations as a result of matchmaking. Right. I'll point out our logo. So that's our town logo there, the town of East Lyme. We were famous way back when for our scallop shells. Niantic-based scallops were very famous before eelgrass issues and such invaded our Niantic Bay and the waterways. They're coming back. So I went to one of those logo companies online for $100. They have contests, right? So I know I get a little glare there. Let me see if I can, if I type, that's our logo for this. I'm so excited about that. I actually did that first a long time, maybe a year ago. I did the logo to inspire me to not let this idea. I have 100 ideas on my desk. This one got done because I already spent $100 of my own personal money getting the logo done. And so we encompass the scallop shell, but they become people.
That's right.
And it's the sunshine there. Maybe that's the sun rising over the horizon. Who knows? it's part of it. We were trying to create a brand and an identity to this program and link it back into the town. So I wanted to show that off.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's a beautiful logo, Mark, and I think it highlights the importance that you put on people, on individuals, making the community and being part of the community, and contributing to the community through service and through engaging with you and with each other. And that's one of the things that the Civic Health Index report talked about also, the importance of neighbors working together. And in Connecticut, the report showed that in 2013, 8.6% of Connecticut residents work with their neighbors on a community issue. And that was an important part of civic health because it is about real social cohesion and people working together and connecting with their neighbors. Would you say that that's also part of life, community life in East Lyme? And the volunteer corps is also a way to catalyze that more?
Yeah, I know that happens anyway. I know that there are, good neighbors out there that are watching over maybe a senior neighbor or whatever. But I think there's also a need. I don't think all those needs do get met. I live on a short street, and frankly, I don't know half the neighbors on that street of 10 houses. I think we all get in our cars, back out of the garage sometimes or the driveway, and off we go, and we don't interact sometimes depending on your neighborhood. And I know that there are seniors in our town that need help with snow shoveling, with branches that might come down. Listen, there's also the kids that will cut the grasses and all that. But if I could get a list of some really super needy people with need for those little tasks and match them up with people in their neighborhood. Hey, if, with a 3-inch storm, they just need their walkway shoveled or their sidewalk, which is going to be an ordinance in our town soon, to shoveled. It makes the world of difference to that person who's receiving the help. And I think I guarantee you every person on that street would go out of the way and do it, but they don't know. Right. So maybe we can make that connection. I'm hopeful. And again, maybe a couple of years from now, we come back with a report that says, look at all we've accomplished. But with this here and with myself putting up the $100 to make sure I got the logo done and to launch this thing. And by the way, we have an Eagle Scout who's involved. This is his Eagle Scout project, is to get high school kids involved and get civic groups involved with the matchmaking. I think we're going to go a long way. We got to keep this front and center and keep talking about it, keep planting the seeds.
That's right. And, one of the things that, with this conversation we're having today, one of the purposes is for the civic ambassadors who are watching this Zoom event to get ideas about how they can engage their mayors or first selectmen, first select women to be agents of change and civic ambassadors themselves. And obviously, the work you're doing is really about maximizing opportunity for creating a culture of civic engagement and civic participation. So for the civic ambassadors who are here, is there any advice that you can share with them as to how they can engage their mayors or their first selectmen in supporting this kind of civic initiatives? Any advice you have for them?
Well, the mayors are certainly, I engage with a lot of the CEOs, the chief elected officers, officials in all the towns through organizations like CCM, Connecticut Council of Municipalities, and other groups like the Council of Governments. Any one of the CEOs are welcome to contact me. We probably know each other anyway, and we can, I can give them, they can borrow all my ideas or find better ones out on the web somewhere. I think. Listen, I'm less of a politician and more of a manager, business owner who happened to be here. I don't have political aspirations to go any further, and that's now on tape. So I have to hold myself to that. But listen, people, if you're in a job like this, you're out there to help. And I guarantee you, every CEO in the state, every mayor and first selectman are already getting inundated with volunteer requests or seeing the need to match people up. They're already doing it. They might be not doing it as formal as logo and program and sign up and not getting into the matchmaker business. And maybe they don't need to. Maybe there are civic groups like yours, churches that are kind of just taking over. But they're already engaged. I would welcome any one of the participants that are viewing this to definitely reach out. If they think there's a need in their community, definitely reach out to their mayor and first selectman and have a discussion. I mean, that's the job they're in, is to have discussions. And if they can't give you 15 minutes of their time, they probably don't belong to the job.
That's right. They're supposed to be public servants for the public.
Yeah, we hear a lot of stupid ideas. We hear a lot of dumb ideas, but that's okay, because from that comes other ideas. And
That's right.
I don't have all the answers, but the people around me do. So, you know, and I listen, every CEO in the country, chief elected official, like we sometimes abbreviate that to CEO, but every mayor and first selectman in the country, they can't do anything alone. They have great department heads. They have great council people and people working for them, with them, volunteer groups, civic groups. I don't accomplish anything alone in this town. It's all a team effort, and that's the truth.
Exactly. And, you know, one of the things that I share with the civic ambassadors is a blueprint, a report or document that was developed by the Cities of Service. And I think I shared that with you, Mark,
Yes.
as well. It's a really nice, short document that really gives you a step-by-step process of how you can create a group of volunteer leaders who can go to their mayor and sort of engage them in creating a culture of civic engagement, developing a plan, right? A plan for developing that civic engagement culture. So I encourage the civic ambassadors to review that publication and use it in addition to the advice that you just heard from First Selectman Nickerson. So at this point, I would like to give our other participants the opportunity to ask questions or to make comments on what they've heard from you. So I'd like to open the floor now for that. And Sandy, you can help us with that, right, Sandy?
Yes.
Okay, so any questions from anyone or comments? Don't be shy. Make sure that you're not muted when you are asking your question. Okay.
This is Lucia Hernandez. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. First Selectman, for doing this today. It really gives me a lot of ideas and a lot of hope for maybe things we can start either in the town I live in or here in the city of Hartford. How long did it actually take for you to be able to access people to participate in your great program?
A good question. So again, the idea was incubating for a while, and when we finally rolled up our sleeves and said, okay, let's get our IT department to talk about how we create this on our website, and then who's going to administer it, because when the names come in, we have to then move them to a database. So it took a little bit of that work, that IT. But we have an IT department of one in our town. So you know, yeah, it's just Carmen. It's just Carmen. It's a small town with an efficient budget, and you know, the municipal world is difficult these days. We need volunteers because we can't afford to do it. And we actually have a volunteer that helps Carmen. He's a techie from way back and all that. So it took us from when we really started rolling up our sleeves in October to launching it somewhere in, I think, March. And again, we weren't working on this full time. We were getting around to it. But once we launched it, the names just poured in. I mean, we had 30 or 40 people the first day.
Wow.
So, and it was just an idea. It wasn't, you know, it was just an idea. We weren't giving people things to volunteer for yet. We were saying, do you want to be a volunteer? Later, we'll tell you what you can sign up for. Just put your name on the list. And so now we have examples. Now we have a list of a host of opportunities that we can market, if you
Yeah,
will.
and you know, Mark, that one of the things that I read about cities of service, and they have over 35 cities of service. These are mayors and you know, other public officials who have embraced this idea of creating this culture and promoting volunteerism and service in different ways. And one of the things that some of them have done is they have started celebrations, celebrating volunteerism in their cities or town. So they devote an afternoon or a day to which they bring different civic organizations and groups and volunteers who are part of the volunteer corps that they have created to participate and have a festive event where they have food that is donated, or you know, they're able to recruit some, get some funding or money from donations. In fact, to have food vendors, to have entertainment, to have, you know, balloons and have clowns for the children, different kinds of festive activities to celebrate volunteerism and to acknowledge and recognize and give awards to volunteers who have been doing great work. So is that something that you might see in the future maybe happening?
You know, maybe. I was thinking of that. I was listening to you come up with that idea and or deliver that, and we'll see. You know, we get hands off once we've made the match, right? So while I'll hear stories of how many people signed up to be part of the soup kitchen or the, you know, this, or another volunteer opportunity, we're not really tracking that data. We'll know from the organizations that they're thriving, that they're continuously picking up new people. They do anyway. They do anyway in our community, right? So well, this is just another way of promoting volunteerism. Will we have that celebration day? Maybe, yeah. Why not? Why not? And it only promotes it and gets more people interested as well. So yeah, we do a lot of that anyway in town. We do celebrate, you know, the different organizations, the Rotary Club, which is all volunteer, of course, and you know, the United Way. I know someone is involved in the United Way. Our Eastern Connecticut branch is very active, and they do a lot of volunteer celebrations as well. So maybe we can, you know.
So Mar, I know Mar Persai is here. Mar, are you there? Mar Persai? Mar
Was there.
I think she,
hello?
I think she left.
Oh, she left.
I don't
Well,
think she's on the list anymore.
right. I was going to invite Mar Persai, who is the Director of Civic Engagement for the United Way in New Haven.
Right.
Because you mentioned the United Ways, and she's a civic ambassador. I was hoping that she would be here because I thought maybe she might have a question, but I guess she had to leave at some point. So any questions, any last questions from the other civic ambassadors for Mr. Nickerson?
Dana and I have sort of an intriguing one. This is Lucia again. Did you have any pushback, like from any of the employees in the town thinking, well, is this a way that I might end up losing my job because you might attract a volunteer that maybe has the skill level or skill set or the, you know, education that maybe one of them does? I'm just curious to see.
Yeah, so there is that, right? There is that. We see that already. We don't see that necessarily, but that is an issue. So are you volunteering to take someone's job in town hall? Or most especially the senior center, where we have a paid senior center bus driver. We have a couple bus drivers at the senior center, but they're also volunteer drivers, which is part of this program, is, hey, would you volunteer once a week to pick up a senior and bring her to Stop and Shop? or once a week, would you befriend someone to take her to her doctors? Is that a town job, or is that a volunteer job? And so there will be a mix there. There will be a mix, and in some areas you could get into collective bargaining issues. I think the state of Connecticut protects towns that can perform services with volunteers, that they're allowed to do that. If you can find a volunteer to pick up the trash at the end of an event instead of hiring your public works people to do it, or in our town we have beaches, so could we have a volunteer group come out and do the beaches instead of the Parks and Rec crew? I think we're protected on that. Not a lawyer, but I remember reading something about that. Very good question, and I think in certain atmospheres in certain towns you're going to run into that, and that has to be delicate, right? Listen, there's so many volunteer opportunities. There's so many, and I'm fond of saying, the town is like a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. Everyone has a different shape and a different skill level and different opportunities. And someone might just give blood, and that's volunteerism. Aren't you helping someone else? Aren't you being selfless in that moment? And that's volunteerism, and that might be on my next newsletter. Hey, there's a blood drive. That's volunteerism. And when one piece of that jigsaw puzzle is missing, the puzzle isn't complete, right? You have an unfinished product. So we need everybody in at every level. That's why, Val, I'll challenge you on that. Whatever small percentage you said people are volunteering, I think people, when you really boil it down, people, for the most part, do find ways to give to others. And that is my definition of volunteerism. It doesn't have to be taking the job of a civic employee, but helping out in big ways and in small ways, because the small ones add up.
Yes, that's right. And by the way, I'm glad you mentioned donating and donating blood, for example, or donating food or clothing. Connecticut actually ranks high in that, in comparison to the rest of the country. Connecticut, I think it was number 4 in the list of states among the highest. And at one point, it was the 3rd highest state in terms of donating. And so we can take pride in Connecticut, and I can see that East Lyme can also take pride in the great work you're doing. So, we're any other last questions before we close the Zoom event from any of the ambassadors?
Thanks, because I have a lot of great ideas.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Nickerson.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tere. Anyone else?
I too would like to thank the Selectman for his great idea for sharing it with us, because there's all manner of possibility. There are ways that maybe students who need to do community work in order to graduate can maybe participate as a volunteer, either helping an elderly person, maybe tutoring a student after school. It opens up so many doors.
I know another town that is not going to create this matchmaking heavy IT thing that is more dependent on the town, but have just banded 20 people together to say, we are the action group. Yes. And we're here to volunteer. And if you want to be part of our group, give us a call, give us a text and be part of the group. And they're just running around town looking to do good. They're just a band of brothers and sisters that are, but it catches on, and other people jump on, and all of a sudden you have 100 people, and the list becomes almost unmanageable. And, it's a good problem.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Mark, because we had Mr. Eric Liu, who is a prominent national speaker and scholar of civic health and civic engagement, and he came to speak to the Connecticut All State House a few years ago, and he talked about the contagion, about civic participation being contagious, and how each of us can actually be someone who gives that contagion to someone else and engages them. And imagine if we had what you're describing, Mark, if we had each one of our residents in our state being involved in some way, I'm sure we would have 80, 90% of the state volunteering. I know, and I agree with you that the statistics of the Civic Health Index report doesn't tell the whole story.
Indeed.
But I think imagine if we could use the power of storytelling of how
Right.
people are making an impact by being engaged, how that can influence others to also be part of that.
And look how easy it is to put out on a Facebook page or a website nowadays, a link saying, hey, we're cleaning up the beach tomorrow. We're looking for volunteers, or we're having a Special Olympics event coming through. There are people out there that like to help us out, and watch those numbers just blow up.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely, and that creates that community spirit that is already strong, but it makes it
Right.
even more stronger, you know,
Right.
and it creates that sense of pride and identity in the community. I can see that, you know, Mark, you are a civic ambassador. You are someone who inspires those in your town to be engaged, to be part of the community in larger ways, in greater ways. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you personally on behalf of Everyday Democracy and also the Connecticut Civic Health Project and the Connecticut Civic Ambassadors for taking time from your very busy schedule to join us today. And hopefully next year we can invite you again and you can give us an update on how, you know, how the volunteer corps is coming along.
I'd love to, and I'd love to hear how it catches on in other communities as well. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Mark, thank you very much. And thank you all the civic ambassadors for joining us. Take care.
Thank you.